restoring hope and transforming lives. Welcome to the Beyond Survival Ministries podcast.
Welcome to our first episode of Beyond Survival Ministries podcast. We are so delighted that you're joining in with us today. I am Sue Willis, founder and executive director of Beyond Survival Ministries, and with me today is our assistant director, Dee Dee Kramer.
Hello,
Dee Dee.
This is so exciting. Our very first podcast for Beyond Survival Ministries.
I know.
It's a great day here, and we're so glad that you've joined us. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, Beyond Survival Ministries, our mission is restoring hope and transforming lives, all through the transforming power and love of Jesus Christ. You know, so at the Ministry Center, we accomplish all of these things through counseling, coaching, and compassion-based ministries. You know, so you and I see people every day who come to this center and they're hurting and they're dealing with all kinds of brokenness and the everyday challenges of life. We've seen people affected by abuse, trauma, depression, and anxiety. And, you know, our passion is to see everyone walk in freedom and overcome those challenges and live the abundant life that God has for them. Because we believe that God wants to take us all from that place of merely surviving to beyond survival and then to thriving, right?
Yes.
So, Sue, what are we going to be talking about today?
In today's episode, Dee Dee, we're going to be talking about survival. That's a big subject,
That
right?
is.
But if we're honest, all of us have survived something or are still surviving something, right?
Absolutely.
Right? And we can be surviving different ways and from different things. For example, we all just came through the pandemic, right? But we survived. Most of us survived that pandemic.
Yes.
But yet it did leave some residue on even how we live life.
Right.
Some are struggling on this side of the pandemic. Some experienced loss. Some experienced, many different things. We know just at our ministry center, our calls increased tremendously with individuals struggling with anxiety and fear and depression. And so while they survived the pandemic, they're still trying to get over the effects. Right. And God never intended for us to just survive anything.
No.
And I mean, that's something for us to really think about. We weren't designed, nor did he create us to just survive, but he wants us to move past merely surviving to thriving. And that's what our ministry center
all about.
Right, is all about. So whether our viewers today and listeners are struggling with a marriage, let's say surviving a marriage, maybe an unhealthy marriage, or have gone through a loss or some other trauma or crisis of the sort, what we mainly want to focus on today is that we don't have to stay stuck in that place of merely surviving, but moving on to thriving in life. And that takes time. And everybody process is different. We can say that and at their own pace. But the hope before us is that we don't have to stay stuck. We can move on.
That's great.
So I think the best thing is, let's just take a look at what is surviving.
Yeah.
What does it mean to survive? And actually, to survive is to come out of a difficult, dangerous, traumatic experience and remain alive. That's surviving. And that's just what we talked about, surviving something.
Right.
But that's all. It's just to come out. But moving beyond that, I don't want to just survive something and come through and not have like life, if I could say it in that way, still flowing through me, okay? So that leads me to revive, okay? We know from survival to surviving to thriving, but let's look at that word revive for a minute. To revive is to return to life.
Oh, that's good.
Okay? It's to recover life or strength, to live anew, afresh, again, and it's to renew our mind or memories. Now, that's a second step to looking at coming out of survival, okay? And then, of course, the last is to thrive. It's to prosper and flourish, to grow or develop vigorously, to flourish, to be successful, healthy, and strong. So again, when we just look at these three things, surviving is awesome. I always commend survivors when I minister to them in whatever area they have survived.
Right.
But the encouragement is, come on, but let's move on.
That's good.
Let's get life flowing back in. You know,
Yes.
that's reviving.
That's great.
That's reviving, and then pressing on to thriving, where it's no longer carrying maybe a victim mentality,
Right.
of which survivors can have. I've had them in my own life, but moving on to just thriving in a life, enjoying the life the way God has created us to do.
I love that. I loved how you said reviving too, because you said it gives strength back. It gives
Yes.
life back. So not only did you just come through that traumatic experience, but to revive, then you're getting life back. You're getting strength back. And for some of our listeners and viewers today, you might be thinking to yourself, well, goodness, am I surviving something? Am I still in that place? And, we were talking earlier about how people can sometimes go into survival mode.
Yes.
You just
yes.
continue to just kind of muddle through to get through the situation, whatever challenges that you're facing. And, things like trauma, prolonged grief, or even burnout can cause us to go into survival mode. And so you might be wondering, am I living in survival mode? And I want to go through a quick list here of some of the different characteristics of someone who is living in survival mode. Now,
That's
this
good.
is not a comprehensive list by any means. It just kind of touches on the subject. But if you feel like you're just trying to get through the day and you can just focus on these next 24 hours because it's all that you can handle, you might be in survival mode. You have a hard time planning ahead. You're always tired and have low energy levels. You can feel fatigue in your body and in your mind. You might find it hard to sleep just trying to get your mind to settle down. Your head hits the pillow and the thoughts just start racing. You might be in survival mode. You might even be experiencing panic attacks or anxiety attacks. That feeling in your mind and in your body of that fight or flight response to something. You might even have a lack of passion or interest in things that you previously enjoyed, but you just don't have that desire to do it anymore.
That's true. That's
right?
so true. Yes.
Or you might find yourself reacting to situations rather than responding to them. Your emotions can be just in high gear, so you find yourself reacting emotionally instead of rationally. That happens so many times. Or like you had said earlier, what if you just feel stuck and you're unable to move forward? When you think about that term survival mode, I think we can all say we've been in survival mode at one time or another in our lives. But, hard times are going to happen to all of us. Jesus said, in this world, you will have trouble. But take heart, because I've already overcome the world. Every one of us has walked through difficult times. But like you said, Jesus doesn't want us to merely survive those difficult times. He wants us to bring us through them, and he wants us to thrive and to be an overcomer. So what do you think the difference is between being a survivor and being an overcomer?
That's good. That's a good point. I probably would answer that, Dee Dee, survivors, if I could say it in this way, if they just survive and don't move forward, again, that's a good thing.
Right.
Okay. But they actually remain victimized. I know that's hard to maybe sometimes for us to really, think about, but it's true.
Right.
A survivor, if they don't press on further, they actually remain victimized in their thinking. That's
good.
mainly where it happens, in their thought life.
Right.
In moving forward, we're overcomers, they're victorious.
Yes.
Okay, now they had to take action. They have to, overcomers didn't just become overcomers because that's what they thought they wanted to do.
Right.
They moved beyond just surviving. Survivors have wounds, okay? And wounds hurt. Wounds are real.
Absolutely.
They're hard. Overcomers have scars.
Oh, that's good.
Their wounds have healed.
Yes.
Okay, they
Oh, that's
still
so
have the
good.
scars, but their wounds have healed.
I love that.
God, actually, how do I want to say this? Because there's so much that we could say around this, but actually, let's just keep it at that for now. That in the end, overcomers have scars. I think a good example that I could share with that is a story.
Oh, that'd
How
be
about that?
great.
Okay, I read this story, oh my goodness, it must have been 10 years ago. And I loved it. I just loved it. And it's actually a true story. Okay. But I'm going to read it because it's easier for me to read than try to tell the story. But this is a story of an athletic girl who was in an accident that resulted in the amputation of her legs. She told the doctor that she wanted to walk again, even jog and hike. The doctor told her she must resign herself to the fact that she would be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life, okay? He was the doctor. He was telling her the condition that medically she was in at that point. But the girl pulled back the covers from the hospital bed, slid herself to the end of the bed, and fell onto the floor. She then crawled to the middle of the room and did a handstand. I mean, can you imagine
That's amazing.
this? That was actually it was probably longer than 10 years ago. But I mean, do you see this? I mean, here she is. She truly was paralyzed. That was true. I'm not paralyzed. I mean, she lost her legs. Yeah. But she didn't settle for what was said to her.
Right.
She believed in something more. In other words, she didn't want in her mind to just be a survivor and remain a victim of her circumstances. She moved on to become an overcomer. And boy, that is just such an encouragement. It was to me when I read that back then. And I believe for those of you that are joining us today, as we've been saying, you don't have to stay stuck. To this day, she is very active. Listen to this, using her prosthetic legs to walk, jog, and even hike. So let's just look at this for a moment, okay? No, she didn't get a miracle.
Right.
Okay? But what is the greater miracle? I mean, let's think about this. Yes, an awesome miracle would have been that God gave her new legs.
Right.
Okay, that did not happen on this side of heaven.
Right.
But she didn't remain stuck in what had happened to her. In other words, her condition that she was in, and she went on to thrive in life. That's powerful, even
so
without legs.
That's amazing.
That's awesome to me. That is so awesome. That is so awesome. So a point we want to look at here is we all, no matter what we're surviving, need to rise above the thought that we are powerless.
Oh, that's so good.
Because first of all, we're not powerless.
Right.
And with God, even if we feel we are powerless, He can reveal to us that that is not true. Because with God, we can overcome and receive all that we desire through Him, just like that girl. The very thing that she did, rolling off of that hospital room, she continued in that. Now, we don't see the struggles.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
The struggles that she would have had.
The hard work.
Or the hard work.
The practice.
Right. The practice. But she did not remain a victim to her circumstances. So that's pretty good.
That is so good. I love that.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, it was such a beautiful picture of being an overcomer because her circumstances didn't change, like you said, but her perspective was not focused on them. No. Rather, she focused on reaching her goal, and she did it. And she truly learned how to thrive in her circumstances.
So awesome.
You know, Sue, one of our key scriptures at Beyond Survival Ministries is John 10:10,
yes,
which is the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus came so that we would have life and have it abundantly. And, you know, think about your situation right now. Do you feel like you're merely surviving something? Or do you feel like something has been stolen from you? The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Maybe you feel like your peace has been stolen or your joy has been stolen. You know, the circumstances that left you feeling that way were not God's doing. They're not in His nature. They're not in line with His character. You know, 1 John 3:8 tells us that Jesus went around doing good and healing all that were oppressed of the devil and destroying all of the works of the devil. What are the works of the devil? To steal, to kill, and to destroy. But Jesus came to give us abundant life. God is only good. And you know, the scripture, Jeremiah 29:11 says that His plans for us are good. They're to give us a hope and a future. They're to prosper us and not to harm us because he wants us to thrive. So, Sue, how do you look at that to tell if you're surviving or thriving? What are ways we can figure that out?
I think first of all, our probably our viewers and listeners, even to this point, kind of have a good idea of where they're at. You know, with wow, I'm surviving, or no, I'm thriving. If someone's thriving, you know, they're off and running, just as we said. But maybe for those that are listening to us today, these are just some things that I like ponder in my own life. Okay, when I'm going through something, but we need to really stop and assess where we're at, okay? Right now, I kind of call this the 4 A's,
like
if you
that.
could say it like that, okay? Assess. In other words, recognize where they're at right now, you know, and be honest about it. We really need to be honest about our feelings, about what we're going through. And so assess. That's just assessing where we're at.
Okay.
And then the second A, if I could say it like this, is acknowledge and accept that you cannot fix or change what has happened to you on your own. Honestly, that is so true, Dee Dee, but it can be comforting too, to know that we don't have to survive on our own, and really we won't.
Right.
If we isolate ourselves, or even in our situations, you know, maybe you find yourself even today with, wow, I'm so isolated in my own problems. That's not a good place to be. And so the first thing is acknowledging and accept that you can't change what has happened, but you certainly also need to know that you can't do it on your own. We need people.
Absolutely.
We need each other.
Yes.
And ultimately, we need God, whether our viewers know God or not, that are listening today. We need God.
Absolutely.
And then that third A is act. There's just something about action, and it's the truth. We can sit and we can think of what we are going to do. We can ponder what we want to do, but the truth is we got to take action. When that woman heard from her doctor, you know, that fact that he said, you will never walk again the rest of your life, okay? Right. The truth is she didn't accept that. Right. She knew there was more, but she didn't just speak to him.
That's right.
Answer him back. She was determined, and she took action. I don't even know how she did it, but she, with no legs, rolled off that bed, come on, and did a handstand.
It's amazing.
She acted on what she wanted, and that just is amazing. And we need to act. It's a step of faith. It really is taking a step of faith, whether it's a big step or a small step. It's taking a step of faith towards others and knowing that we need them, and certainly towards God, right? Certainly towards God, because he can actually do more than we could ever even ask or think.
That's right.
And we can even press into asking the Lord to empower us. Maybe our listeners today are feeling, but I do feel powerless. Then ask God to strengthen you.
That's good.
Ask him to strengthen you inside. Grab a friend and say, will you pray with me? Or will you encourage me? We're not called to do it alone. And then the last day, which I love, is certainly last but not least, is we have amazing promises from God's word that tell us we don't have to survive, but we can go from surviving to reviving to thriving in life. And that's really encouraging. That is really encouraging. And just those thoughts alone, if we will embrace them and begin to get a mindset that is not a victim of our circumstances, which we call a victim mentality, and know that we can encourage, first of all, ourselves in the Lord and embrace these truths that we can move beyond surviving. And you know, Dee Dee, we talked about in her case, it was surviving a trauma, a tragedy, which involved her physical body, okay? But how many of you, maybe let me just speak with you now that maybe you're surviving a rough marriage. God didn't call you to just survive.
That's right.
There is the hope that you can press forward to, whether it's seeing a counselor or getting help from someone so that you don't just merely survive that marriage, but thrive in it. What about loss? Maybe you've lost someone and you're just stuck in grief and you can't seem to get past that grief. Again, God didn't want you to just survive the loss. He wants to bring you past the loss. He understands it, but he wants to bring you past that loss so that you can thrive again in life. And my goodness, can you think of any more? I mean, there's so many things that, that we can be surviving. Those are just a few, but what a hope. Amen. And if our world ever needed hope in this day, right, it is now. Right. That we can hope, and especially with tragedies and traumas and places where we have become a victim of circumstances, that we don't have to remain there.
That's a great tool to get us started on our way from just surviving to thriving. And as we wrap up today, we hope that you've been encouraged by this message.
We just want to thank you for joining with us today, and we look forward to meeting with you again on our next podcast. God bless you.
We hope you were encouraged and empowered by today's conversation. Don't miss a single episode. Subscribe to the Beyond Survival Ministries channel, and be sure to check us out on Facebook too.